Gaston Stronck, who has a distinguished 30-year career in diplomatic service, and we are honored to have him speak today regarding the topic on many of our minds. US post-election impact on Luxembourg and Europe. So, Mr. Ambassador, welcome. Thank you very much for your continued support of the Luxembourg Chamber and all the events that we're doing with the Luxembourg Chamber in New York and AmCham. So many thanks, and I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Michel. Thank you, Tony, and thank you to the entire team of the Luxembourg American Chamber of Commerce for making this event possible. My gratitude goes also to Paul and the team of the American Chamber of Commerce in Luxembourg. Thank you, Casey, for being here today. Thank you to my colleagues in New York and San Francisco for joining us, and thank you to our honorary consuls in the United States, Canada, and Nicaragua that joined us today. Yes, we take the next slide, please. US post-election impact on Europe and on Luxembourg. When a few weeks ago the news broke that Joe Biden won the race for the White House, we all could hear all over Europe an audible sigh of relief. We have had 4 very difficult years, and if you carefully listen to the statements of the heads of state and prime ministers, you could hear the messages about renewed hope and a renewed transatlantic partnership. So for this presentation, I have divided the subject in 3 categories. You see, I will take some time to talk about trade. After all, it's an event by Chambers of Commerce. I will refer to climate diplomacy because it will be an important part of the renewed relationship between the United States and Europe, the European Union, and the member states. And then I have put foreign and defense policy in one single item, and I will say a few words about that at the end of the presentation. So let's go to trade, and let's check what the priorities are. First of all, and this came very clear from the Biden administration and from the president himself in the early days of his mandate, the fight of the COVID pandemic comes first. The return of the economy to sustainable growth is important. So recovery is the #1 subject. It's the #1 priority in the United States. It's the #1 priority in the European Union for all member states. This is something that we should not forget. So this is not a presentation about fighting COVID, but let me say that the European Union and the US, they have to follow the multilateral effort to lift tariffs, non-tariff barriers, and export restrictions on pandemic-related medicines and medical supplies. They have to address chain weaknesses, and they have to guarantee full supply chain resiliency. Unfortunately, the authorization mechanism for exports of COVID-19 vaccines from the European Union came at a very bad moment. Most of you probably have heard about the story and the difficulties to get the agreement with AstraZeneca done and operational, and that was quite a fight. The Commission reacted with an authorization mechanism for exports, and it was not the most fortunate reaction. Still, we have to cooperate on this together. COVID is a global pandemic, and nobody can solve the problems alone. Nobody can fight it alone. So we all have to be united on this. So this on COVID, but we have also to eliminate counterproductive tariffs beyond COVID and within the recovery schemes of the US and the European Union and the member states. This is, I think, a #1 priority. And if we take the next slide, we see that there is an important phone call scheduled between the President of the Commission, von der Leyen, and President Biden. And what I heard is that the idea is to have a freeze on levies. The total amount of levies today, looking at trade between the United States and Europe, is 18 billion. It's 18 billion. One of the most prominent cases is the Airbus-Boeing case, lasting for decades. So 11 billion levies alone. In this case, on aircraft parts, on unrelated sectors such as wine, spirits, olives, tractors, video games. Freeze the levies would be a very good message, at least for 6 months, and it would be a very good opportunity, in a certain sense, to buy time and to be back at the table and not to have this action and reaction and escalation for tariffs and counter tariffs. Another case is the steel and aluminium tariffs. It's 25% for European imports on steel, 10% on aluminium. Unfortunately, the former administration based these tariffs on the Trade Expansion Act of '62, and in more particularly even on Section 232, arguing that the national security is a case. The EU is entitled to act for an amount of 4.3 billion on motorcycles. That's Harley Davidson, of course, jeans, levies, and bourbon whiskey. That is very uncomfortable for the Kentucky bourbon producers. But you understand, this cannot be the solution. Tariffs, counter tariffs, fighting each other's, trying to push the other one, the partner in the corner, instead of having these tariffs, instead of having counter tariffs. We need to be back at the table. We need to negotiate, and we need, as allies, we need to find solutions. If we do not find solutions, let's take the Airbus-Boeing case. These are the two biggest producers of aircrafts in the world. The Chinese are only waiting for more battles between Airbus and Boeing. And sooner or later, they will be ready to put their airplanes, their aircrafts on the market. So we cannot afford to fight. We have to cooperate, and we have to find solutions regarding the subsidies that the US government and that the EU are giving to Airbus and Boeing. I'm not saying that we should not have subsidies at all, but at least it should be an arranged setting where Airbus and Boeing, the US and the European Union can find their priorities and will be satisfied. The next slide, please. So beyond tariffs, we have to work and to cooperate on the WTO. Well, first of all, I think that would be a not so complicated one to agree on the new Director General. A lot of member states support Madame Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala from Nigeria. She's an excellent candidate. We have to get the dispute settlement body operational again. That's the appellation body. You may remember that in February 2020, the Trump administration accused the appellation body of engaging ultra-virus actions. That means acting beyond its power. And the Trump administration blocked the appointment of new judges, leaving the appellation body in a desperate situation, totally incapable to handle all the work. So we have to get this dispute settlement procedures working again, and we have to cooperate beyond now the Director General and beyond the dispute settlement body. We have to cooperate on a reform of the WTO as such. Then we need to relaunch the Transatlantic Economic Dialogue. I mentioned this Trade and Technology Council. Whatever the name of an institutionalized body is, I think it would be very good to have institutionalized cooperation with councils, working groups, whatever, to cooperate on the regulatory cooperation, to to be back to agreements on conformity assessment and acceptance. This is a system of mutual recognition of standards. We need to work on standardization, and we need to work on sanctions, of course, political sanctions, but that is not the main idea here. This is about economic sanctions against state subsidized entities in China. Standardization is not a very attractive subject. It is very, very technical, but if the US and the Europeans are able to agree early on standards, they get a better grip on the technology and on the market. If we don't do so, the market is open for imports from countries with unstandardized products, and that should not happen. So we have neglected over the last years our common work on standardization, on regulatory cooperation, and we should enhance it. We should be back to it, and it will be very helpful also for containing the Chinese operators. So we take the next slide. We need to boost the transatlantic digital economy, and we have to cooperate on tech governance. I mentioned data protection. I mentioned the updated privacy shield, e-evidence, artificial intelligence, 5G. Here we have all the subjects that we have to bring to the table. Data protection is complicated. You know that the EU has approved in 2016 a general data protection regulation. And on the American side, we have a rather unregulated system, no federal laws, and some states that have been active in data protection, but it's by far not as complete as the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. I don't argue that the GDPR is the very best regulation that you can have, but I think it's a good starter. It's a good point to cooperate with the US on this. Unfortunately, we run into additional difficulties, and that is the famous Schrems II decision from the European Court of Justice. You may know that Mr. Schrems is an Austrian citizen, that he's a fighter for data protection and privacy. And he with his action to the Court of Justice in Luxembourg, he was very successful, and the privacy shield was declared unlawful by the European Court in Luxembourg in July 2020. Thanks God, the court decided to uphold the use of the standard contractual clauses. But these standard contractual clauses do not necessarily protect data where national legislation is incompatible with the European Charter of Fundamental Rights and with the GDPR. And that is the case for the US. So with the SSCs, the standard contractual clauses, I think the big companies have found an arrangement to circumvene or to maintain the exchange of data, or to circumvene the decision of the European Court, or they respect it. Circumvening is not the right word, but they continue to cooperate. But it's a real challenge for small and medium-sized companies and enterprises to keep on their data flow with their American partners. And that's definitely something that we should tackle. We need to cooperate on artificial intelligence, 5G. I think on 5G, the Trump administration has been very successful in convincing us not to have 5G in our national system. So Luxembourg is among those countries who has banned Huawei technology, Huawei 5G technology in Luxembourg, and we are looking at other possibilities. This is necessary to protect our 5G networks from Chinese interferences. And then another complicated issue linked to tech governance, that's the digital services tax. The EU and the United States have been cooperating very actively inside the OECD. Works progressed. It was not very fast, but unfortunately, the Trump administration decided in October last year to leave the table in Paris. So I'm very glad to hear that the Biden administration is back at the table. In Paris, we had two parallel solutions in the negotiation process, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. The US administration now stated that they would be back at the table to go for Pillar 2 and for a global minimum on taxation regarding the digital services. So this is a very complex matter. The experts argue that Pillar 2 and global minimum would be a guilty-like tax. For those who know the American high tax exclusion, the American global income, intangible low taxed income concept, this would be applied mutatis mutandis within Pillar 2, and that could be a way finding a solution. And of course, then we come to the question of blending, if there would be a global blending, jurisdictional blending, or entity blending. The Luxembourg preference would be clearly global blending, but we are looking forward to the negotiations in Paris, and we are very confident that with the Biden administration being back at the table in Paris, solutions will be visible. Then, and I have mentioned it already a number of times, we need to cooperate to address the economic threats from China. Secretary Blinken in a recent interview said that the Trump initiative, the Trump administration initiative on China, a tougher tone on China, has been a very good initiative. And I think he's right. In Europe, we have been very careful. I would not like to say naive concerning our cooperation with China, but we have to cooperate on China, and we have to pursue transatlantic regulatory cooperation and meaningful coordinated actions wherever possible when it comes to China. This is on subsidies. This is on investment screening, to screen investments from China into the EU, into the US. It's on export controls. It's on data policies. I mentioned it. It's on competition policies and heavy subsidies to state-owned companies. It's on procurement standards. It's on visas. It's on human rights, and it's on advanced market-based competition. And we have to stand up for our values together with the United States, and we need with the Chinese a level playing field. And we need to coordinate it with Japan, Canada, Australia, Korea, and other like-minded countries. And last but not least, on China, this economic cooperation agenda extends to the diplomatic efforts, and State Department and European External Action Service, the diplomatic service of the European Union, and the diplomatic services of member states, they have to cooperate on this. Then, with the next slide, we move to climate diplomacy. Today, I think there is no diplomacy without climate diplomacy. We welcome very much the decision of the Biden administration to be back to the Paris Agreement. We take the next slide. We welcome John Kerry to be the special presidential envoy of Biden.
Ambassador, I am frozen here. Somehow my technology is not working. You don't mind, stop and
do it without the technology.
let me try again, okay?
Yeah, you may try again. I continue speaking. So
Yes.
on climate diplomacy, of course, the Europeans, they continued their work. They have been implementing what has been decided in Paris since the signature of the agreement. But the United States is far behind, and we are all very interested to see how the 26-28% target below 25 levels will be achieved by the United States. Today we are in a COVID-related economic system, and as far as I understand, the Americans have achieved 20%. So it's far away from the 26-28% target, and we are currently looking. Yes, there we are, and we are currently looking at the solutions that the American administration will will find to be back in the agreement. We are very, very glad to have the Americans back on board. For Luxembourg, of course, there's a very particular point here, and that's the Luxembourg know-how and the Luxembourg position on green and sustainable finance, and related to the United States. For example, you must know that at the Luxembourg Stock Exchange, we have 280 bonds by US issuers for a total of 124 billion. These are sustainable green bonds. So the American issuers are very present at the Luxembourg Stock Exchange. This happened before the Biden administration decided to be back to the Paris Agreement. Now, with the Biden administration back to the Paris Agreement, I think for us in Luxembourg, it's a unique opportunity to further develop our relations with the United States on green finance and to offer our know-how when it comes to sustainable finance.
So it sounds like it went well, and it got your message, so not urgent, but
and including that, I wanted to mention the investment funds in Luxembourg. That's not bonds; these are investment funds, and many of them are related to renewable energy or to some kind of green and sustainable finance. The total assets under management today in Luxembourg in the investment funds is 5.93 trillion, about almost 6 trillion euro. This is 61% of the global cross-border funds. 20%, more than 20% of the promoters are US players. And in addition to that, Brexit has brought 62 companies to relocate in Luxembourg, including all the important US insurance companies. What I want to say that the return of the United States to the Paris Agreement offers to Luxembourg and the United States a unique opportunity for cooperating in sustainable finance and for cooperating in the framework of sustainable and green investment funds. Just to name the biggest players in Luxembourg, JP Morgan has assets under management in Luxembourg, $358 billion. JP Morgan is number one. BlackRock Financial Management would be number two with 180 billion, Morgan Stanley 117, Franklin Templeton Investment 94, Invesco 72, Goldman Sachs 69, Cantriam 42, MSF Investment Management 38, State Street 33, and so on. So the US players are very, very active in Luxembourg for sustainable investment funds, but also for sustainable bonds. So this was what I had to say on climate diplomacy. A few words on foreign policy. First of all, we all welcome the American return to multilateralism. We welcome the American return to the WHO. We welcome the American return to the Human Rights Council and other UN bodies and agencies. And we welcome the willingness from the American side to play its role in global affairs. The EU will be an excellent partner for the new Biden administration. We are looking forward to cooperate in an even more extensive way. And we have to cooperate our coordination. We have to cooperate on China, to better coordinate on China and on Russia. I mentioned China already before. Beyond trade and beyond the economic subjects, of course, there are a number of political subjects. The Chinese ambitions around the borders. We have the human rights situation in the Western provinces. We have the human rights situation in Hong Kong. We have the complicated situation with Taiwan, and we have an aggressive imperialist China on a number of issues. As I said, the Trump administration recognized this, and I think the Biden administration will continue. The Europeans, of course, they they are very careful on this, and my country is also very careful on this. We have very good relationship with China. We have a strong Chinese economic presence in Luxembourg, and we are definitely not the only country having this strong economic ties with China, but we have to defend our values together with the United States when it comes to democracy, when it comes to human rights, when it comes to the rules of law, and we have to defend the level playing field when it comes to trade and economic exchange. On Russia, yes, a very, very good start. It's not playing with the words, it's new start. It's excellent that the United States and Russia could agree on the extension of the new start for 5 years, but that's the only good news. That's the only good news. The phone call that President Biden and President Putin had was not very encouraging, and President Biden was right to be tough on a number of issues, again on democratic systems, on the rule of law. The Navalny case definitely complicated this situation, and you have seen a few days ago the visit of Borrell, the High Representative of the European Union in Moscow, was not a very successful visit. So a lot of work to do on Russia. We need to stand united on Russia like we need to stand united on China. We need to be open to have them at the table, but we need to be tough on our values, and we need to be tough on our interests. And together, we are much stronger than if the EU or each and every member states would fight again against China and Russia. The fact is that the Chinese and the Russian diplomacy always tempted to divide the Europeans. So they do not like the European Union. They do not like united European positions. They want to talk with the member states, and they apply the old Roman proverb saying divide et impera. We need to stand united inside the European Union, and we need to stand united with the United States on this. Iran and the JCPOA, of course, that's a very interesting and a very attractive subject. When the Trump administration left the deal in 2018, faulting it for failing to curb Tehran's ballistic missile program and backing for regional proxies, he reimposed sanctions on Iran's economy. And in response, Tehran has breached the deal's limits, enriching uranium up to 20% above the 3.67 cap, but below the 90% needed for weapons. But it has also expanding its stockpile on low-enriched uranium and using advanced centrifuges for enrichment. Well, a central problem today in reviving the deal is who goes first. Iran has insisted that the United States ease sanctions before it resumes compliance, and Washington wants to reserve the reverse. And Khamenei said that Tehran's final and irreversible decision was to return to compliance if Washington lifts sanctions. So it's a chicken and an egg situation, difficult to solve. I think we need a step-by-step approach. I hope that Washington could find other ways to ease Iran's economic pain today, smoothing, for example, the way to the International Monetary Fund. That's one of the elements on the table. But compared to the situation half a year ago, we are in a much more optimistic situation, hoping that the JCPOA would be activated again with the Americans, and that this would put a ban to Iran nuclear ambition. In the Middle East, we have to see. I mean, what the Trump administration has done, and Jared Kushner has a lot of good sides. I mean, there are elements of success in having these agreements between Arabian states and Israel. It's a step forward, but it's only a small step, and this has to be taken to the next level, and it will be one of the complicated challenges for the United States and also for Europe. In the former days, we had a quadriga acting on the Middle East, and it would be nice to have it again, and having all players and stakeholders to get peace in the Middle East. On defense policy, that's the next slide, and let me be very short. Of course, the Biden administration like the Trump administration will insist on 2% of defense expenditures for all member states of NATO. That's what we have agreed in Prague at the NATO summit in 2002, and in Wales it was confirmed in 2014. When Joe Biden was elected, a lot of EU member states and NATO member states made comments on their engagement to reach the 2% target. I think we all will pursue the efforts, and step by step we come closer to the 2%. I don't think that all of us will achieve 2% by end of the first Biden mandate, but the trend is good and in a positive way. Nord Stream 2, very complicated issue. No change between the Trump administration's position and the Biden administration. A very complicated problem for Angela Merkel. The American sanctions are hitting Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, which is the German land handling the Nord Stream 2, has created a kind of non-commercial organization to make an effort to finalize the last 100 kilometers of the pipeline. But the positions are clear. I mean, not everything is honeymoon in the US-EU relations. I mean, we have had a very good start with President Biden. We definitely are committed to cooperate. We are committed to be at the table. We are committed to be allies. We are committed to fight for our values. We are committed to cooperate in trade. But of course, there are a number of issues where we not agree. The good thing is that we will not fight it openly, I hope. The good thing is that we will be at the table. The good thing is that we will not react with sanctions and terrorists, but we will apply the diplomatic tool first, trying to find solutions that are acceptable for everybody. So thank you very much. I don't know if I'm in the time, probably more or less. Oh yes, I'm a little bit beyond the time. I could not refrain as a very last message to do something that's completely unrelated with what I said, and that is Capitani on Netflix. I don't know if you know Capitani. Capitani is a very successful Luxembourg crime series, and it's the first ever Luxembourg production on Netflix. It starts tomorrow, and I all invite you to have a look at Capitani. It's a fascinating story, Luxembourg crime series in Luxembourgish with English subtitles. The Luxembourg way to solve crimes. So very interesting, and thank you very much.
That is indeed going to be fascinating. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your insight and overall view of the world. It's very comforting to hear your words. And I believe that, Tony, we have a few questions. I've seen some concerning a certain agreement between EU and China in the chat room.
Michel, if you don't mind, I think it would be best to offer the opportunity to speak to Casey Mays, the chargé d'affaires of
Okay, we will do that right now then, before we proceed with the question and answer. Yes, of course.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Ambassador Stronck. You did a great job, Ambassador, presenting just a snapshot of the agenda for the US-EU relationship over the next 4 years. I think what you illustrated was just how extensive that agenda is, both for rebuilding the US-EU relationship, which the Biden administration has repeatedly said they're committed to engaging in multilateral frameworks more extensively. Another priority that the President Biden and the new Secretary of State have said they're committed to, and engaging the rest of the world. The EU-US relationship remains one of the most important because of the values we share, because of the international rules and norms that we have built over these last 75, 80 years. And it's important that we work together to strengthen those and to reinforce those. And the I won't say much because Ambassador Stronck did a great job of reviewing a lot of the issues at play, only to say that President Biden is off to a roaring start, outlining his priorities for the United States and the principles in which he's going to approach those. One of the most important principles, of course, is that he is committed to American leadership on the world stage, and he's committed to America engaging again in multilateral organizations. He's, as Ambassador Stronck mentioned, has signed back into the Paris Climate Accord, and so he is set forward for an agenda, an ambitious agenda for the United States for the next 4 years. I think there's a lot of opportunities for the US and the EU. There's challenges, no doubt. There's a lot of issues Ambassador Stronck raised that we're going to have to work through on trade, on engaging China and Russia. But I think there's also a lot of great opportunities, not least of which is climate and the work that the Special Envoy Kerry has already outlined that this administration is committed to, the convening of leaders in a few months, setting new targets for the United States and creating international finance mechanism to help emerging economies. There's going to be a lot of work and a lot of opportunity in that field. And so the embassy in Luxembourg, the American embassy in Luxembourg, we're excited to start to forge some of these new growth and cooperation. And I'll stop there.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mason. It's very positive to hear your a very promising feedback, and it's even better to hear that the view that Ambassador Stronck expressed from the European side, that you personally express also from the US side. And I think that we, as you said, we're off to a roaring start, and we look forward to the developments over the next few years. Many thanks. Now, if everybody's okay with that, we'll proceed with the question and answers. And as I said, there was one question from Noel. Ambassador Stronck, would you please comment on the recent EU trade deal with China, referred to in a certain New York Times article a few weeks ago?
Yes, thank you very much. This is the EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment. Yes, what to say, where to start? First of all, the timing of the conclusion of the comprehensive agreement had nothing to do with the elections of President Biden. The EU negotiated for 7 years across 35 rounds and announced in April 2019 at the EU-China summit the objective to conclude these negotiations by the end of 2020. This was long before President Biden became Democratic Party nominee and let alone elected president. The agreement as such is a targeted tool to improve market access and enhance the level playing field for EU companies that have already invested or want to invest in China. I referred to the level playing field before. And the CAI, well, that's the CAI, the Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, promotes these objectives through 3 key pillars. The first one is market access. The second one is rules to level the playing field. And the last one is sustainable development. As for market access commitments are concerned, the following commitments are concerned. First of all, the agreement binds the unilateral openings made by China in the last 20 years. So it includes commitments in economic sectors not covered by the WTO. In the area of services, these commitments will be available to US companies too, on the basis of the most favored nation obligation under WTO GATS. And these commitments thus become a new floor a kind of minimum level of market access for investment in the services sector that China needs to grant to all WTO members. So it's beneficial to the United States too. And it could be very beneficial, for example, on cloud services or, for example, private healthcare. Regarding the level playing field, the agreement includes obligations related to state-owned enterprise, forced technology transfers, transparency for subsidies, and so on and so forth. In a certain sense, there are some similarities to the Chinese commitments secured by the United States under the Phase 1 deal with China. President Trump was very proud of this deal. And during the campaign, he mentioned it many times and how beneficial it was for the American farmers because the deal had quite some obligations for the Chinese to buy American agricultural products. And finally, and for the first time, such an agreement has incorporated the sustainability dimension in terms of labor, very important for China, environment, and climate. So the EU has used its economic leverage to insist on those provisions and opened the door in ways that other recent agreements could not. So not bad at all. I don't see it as negative as the article in the New York Times. So that article made a lot of noise, of course. And I think it's beneficial for Europe, definitely. It's beneficial for the United States too. And it's a good platform for cooperation between the EU and the United States on their future ambitions regarding trade with China. So a good deal for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony, any more questions?
Yes, there's one more question. Sonia is asking, when can we travel to America again?
That's a good question. Huh? We all are really looking forward to that. When I became ambassador, you cannot imagine how many friends I invited to Washington and promised beautiful tours in Maryland and Virginia and even up to New York and beyond. And well, now I cannot keep the promises. And they are looking at me and they are asking, when can I come? When is the travel open to America? Yes, I don't know. I think we have to be tough on fighting the pandemic. There's a very high price to pay in terms of freedom of movement, definitely. It's very difficult for us to travel back to Europe. Diplomats have no particular privilege, so we have to, largely we have to apply the same rules like each and every citizens. We have to go through the testing, we have to go through the procedures, and that makes life very complicated. So, well, the vaccines are on the way, that's very good. Unfortunately, the mutations are on the way too. And you have seen yesterday, a number of European governments have been very, very careful, although the figures are good now, the statistics are good, but they've been very careful in reopening, and they stick to the lockdowns for probably 1-2 additional months. So to overcome the problem with the mutations. And then we have to see. So I'm looking forward to have my friends here in the United States. I'm looking forward to be back to Luxembourg as soon as possible. We all have to go through this, and we have to do it together.
Thank you. Tony?
You hear me now?
Yes, we do.
Dear Mr. Ambassador, how do you envision the future development of the U.S.-Luxembourg relationships in the space sector, especially the Artemis program, where the Luxembourg is now a party of, with the departure of administration Jim Bridenstine and Vice President Mike Pence as head of the National Space Council? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are in a very lucky position as Luxembourgers to have this very fortunate cooperation with the United States in the space sector. I'm very, very grateful for Wendy Evans for having made this possible. I think without Wendy Evans, we would not have gone so far. And he was the one who made this possible, the signature of the MOU in Luxembourg and the visit of Wilbur Ross. And he then put the agreement with NASA on the track with Jim Bridenstine. You know the American system. You have political nominations, of course, at the top with the vice president, but also at the top of the agencies. People come and people leave. I'm very confident that this cooperation will be ongoing. I'm very confident that the Artemis program is still on the agenda. We have to carefully look what the budgetary provisions will be. Will it be 2024? We have to see. But I think this is such an important program underway that it is unthinkable that it would not be continued under the new administration. So we continue the cooperation in the space sector. We have with SES a very strong player in the United States in the civil space sector. We have a very good cooperation with the Pentagon in this area. So it has more facets than only Artemis. This is very, very large, and it's one of the most, I think, the most rightful corporations we have. And I'm very grateful for Wendy and Casey and the team in Luxembourg and the colleagues here in Washington for what we have achieved in the last 5 years. And it's
That's
looking very
excellent.
good. I know that the Luxembourg company iSpace has been selected by NASA for the planned 2024 mission. That's lunar robotics.
I think that's it.
Very good.
Questions? There's no more questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. I think Paul Schonenberg, our co-host today with the American Chamber in Luxembourg, has some like to do some closing remarks, but I don't see him on the video. Paul, maybe you want to get himself some tea or some soup.
Paul, are you there? Maybe not.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, I'd like to thank everyone for participating, especially Ambassador Stronck. On the Luxembourg Chamber side, I'd like to thank Tony and Janet for their continued endeavor in leading the Luxembourg Chamber through the COVID adventures. And we have some more events planning ahead. We have one on March 24th addressing women, young women in enterprise, both American and Luxembourg women who are starting their own companies, and we are organizing that. I think, Tony, a few other things that we may want to mention of events coming up.
Yes, of course. We are working with AmCham and PwC on Women's International Day, and that's March 8th. It's a really wonderful event, and this is our first time participating with them. That would be, that's very unique. So we will have two from here in New York participating, and then the rest will be from Luxembourg. So it's a live event there, but for us it will be on virtual, okay? And we have many others events coming up, really unique one. So I wanted to take this time to thank Ambassador Stronck once again, AmCham for being our co-host. I don't know, I'm sorry that Paul maybe had to go. And Casey, thank you as a new Chargé d'Affaires. We're really happy to have you. And please keep in touch with us, and any other events, we'll look forward. All right.
Final word, I think that there was another event in 2020 that you all missed. That was, of course, the Business Award. We're planning to have it be organized during 2022. date, time to be determined, and we have Paul Schonenberg
He's back?
available. Yeah,
Paul's back.
and
Oh, that's
for his closing remarks. So Paul, take it away, and thank you.
Oh, I apologize. I just had a business call I had to take care of. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for the warmth of the remarks that you make. I have to say it's interesting hearing you express your point of view. Some of the things that we hear from the Luxembourg government over here and from the Luxembourg press are not as warmly pro-American as the kind things that you've said today. And I thank you for that. For the other thing, the only thing else I'd like to say is I certainly want to take the occasion to thank Mr. Franck and Tony for the strength of the relationship that we are building across the Atlantic between LACC NYC and with AmCham. I think that that's very, very helpful on both sides. And I think it's a small contribution that we all can make, which is a good thing. It used to be in the old days when there were so many American soldiers over here that all the Americans and everybody else all made friends together. There aren't as many American military people over here. So I think the ties are good at diplomatic levels, but we need to get more people-to-people contacts to go ahead and promote friendship and promote bonds. And I think between LACC, NYC, and AmCham, we are trying to do that in our small way. And I hope that will help too. I'm very happy to see 72 people in the event today. I think that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you, everyone, and on to the next.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.